Okay, so today we're diving into some pretty big news, especially if you're in the outdoor lighting business. We're
Mhm.
talking Christmas lights, year-round trim lighting, that whole world.
Definitely. And it's all about understanding this new tariff situation with China because it could have a real impact on how you run your business, especially as you're planning for the coming seasons.
Right, exactly. So we're going to be breaking down this Associated Press report, pulling out the key points, and really figuring out, what does it all mean for you and your business? And most importantly, how can you move forward, in a smart and proactive way?
Yeah, absolutely. Because knowledge is power, right? This new tariff, it's a 34% hit on all those goods coming in from China. That's a big deal.
It is. It is a big deal. And it's a direct response to, the tariffs that the U.S. under President Trump put on Chinese products. It's a back and forth, the trade war, as they call it. And this is China's latest move.
And it's happening fast. This isn't some far off thing. The report says these tariffs are going into effect next Thursday. So it's really right around the corner.
Yeah, no time to waste. And the AP report actually calls this the strongest response yet from Beijing, in this ongoing trade war. So that tells you right there, they're serious about this. It's not just a little nudge, it's a major escalation.
Absolutely. And you can even see that reflected in how the stock market reacted. It took a pretty significant dip right after the announcement, and investors, they get nervous when they see this kind of thing. They know it's going to have ripple effects.
Makes sense. And it's not just about this one big tariff number either. There are a lot of other things China's doing in response. Like the report mentions they might tighten up those export controls on rare earth minerals.
Oh, yeah, those. And those are critical. They're used in tons of modern tech, everything from smartphones to, well, a lot of lighting components you probably use in your business. So if those get harder to come by, it's going to have a pretty big impact. And not just in the lighting world.
No, for sure. And, China is also going to be filing a lawsuit with the World Trade Organization, basically saying, hey, these U.S. tariffs aren't fair play. And they're going even further. They're suspending imports of certain things from U.S. companies like sorghum and poultry. They're even putting more companies on their trade restriction lists and starting up an anti-monopoly investigation. It's like they're pulling out all the stops here.
Right. It's a pretty strong message they're sending. But it's also interesting to see how President Trump is responding. The report includes that post he made on Truth Social. He basically said that China is panicking, that they made a mistake by doing this. He even put it in all caps, the one thing they cannot afford to do. Pretty bold statement.
It is, but it's interesting because at the same time, it sounds like he's still open to talking things out with China. Like the report mentions he's willing to keep negotiating on that whole TikTok sale, and he actually extended the deadline for that. He even talked about working in good faith with China, even though they're not exactly thrilled about our tariffs. So there are definitely some mixed signals there.
Yeah, for sure. But let's get down to brass tacks here. What does this all mean for our listeners in the outdoor lighting world? I mean, this 34% tariff, it's going to hit you where it hurts, your bottom line. Think about it, all those Christmas lights, those components for your year-round trim lighting, the raw materials even. A lot of that comes from China.
Exactly. So what you're looking at is a potential, and let's be honest, a pretty likely increase in the cost of goods for your business. And 34%, that's not chump change. So you're going to have to figure out, okay, how do I manage this? Do I eat the cost? Do I pass it on to my customers? It's going to require some serious thought and some adjustments to your plans for the upcoming seasons.
And it's not just lighting either. The report actually quotes some trade groups who are saying that basically everything Americans buy is going to get more expensive because of these tariffs. They specifically mention sneakers, jeans, just everyday stuff. So if those prices are going up, you can bet your bottom dollar that the lighting products you rely on are going to see a price hike too.
Yeah, it's a bit of a domino effect. And it's not just a short-term blip either. This report quotes Gabriel Weldow. He's an expert at this firm called Teneo. And he says that China's response this time is a lot more forceful than in the past. He thinks it means that China's not really holding out much hope for a quick trade deal with the U.S.
Right. It sounds like this could drag on for a while. And Craig Singleton, he's with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, he puts it in even stronger terms. He said that China basically drew a sword with this move. They're not messing around. They're standing up to President Trump, and they're making it clear that they're not going to back down. It definitely feels like things have escalated to a whole new level.
They have.
Yeah,
And
good.
Singleton also warned that, the longer this goes on, the harder it's going to be for either side to back down without losing face. So it's like, everyone's dug in their heels, and it's hard to see how they're going to find a way out of this easily. So for you as a business owner, You've got to be prepared for these tariffs to stick around for a while. This isn't a wait-and-see situation. This is a adapt and overcome situation.
Exactly, and that's what we want to help you do. Now, the AP report, it focuses on the news, but we want to take it a step further and talk about what you can actually do about this. What are some ways you can, get around these tariffs or at least minimize the impact on your business?
Right, because there are always options, always ways to be proactive. So let's start with your supply chain. Have you thought about, looking for suppliers in other countries? Maybe there are places where you can get similar products or components without having to deal with these Chinese tariffs. It might take some research, some digging, but it could be worth it in the long run.
Absolutely. And it's not just about finding new suppliers. You might be able to work with your existing suppliers in China, too. Talk to them, see if there's any wiggle room on pricing. Maybe they can absorb some of the tariff hit. It's all about communication and finding ways to work together.
Right. And while you're at it, take a good hard look at your whole supply chain from start to finish. Are there any ways you can be more efficient? Can you cut down on waste, improve your logistics? Every little bit helps, especially when you're facing these extra costs.
For sure. And maybe you can shift your focus a bit. If you offer services like installation or maintenance, maybe you can put more emphasis on those because those aren't directly affected by the tariffs, right? You're providing a value that goes beyond just the products themselves.
Exactly. And if there's any part of your business where you can use local sourcing or maybe get some components from outside of China, now's the time to highlight that. It's all about finding your competitive edge.
And you're going to have to get really strategic with your pricing. You need to look closely at your costs and figure out how to price your products and services in a way that makes sense in this new landscape. And be upfront with your customers about it. Explain why prices might be going up. Transparency can go a long way in building trust and understanding.
For sure. Now, this might be a longer shot, but it's worth thinking about. Are there any opportunities to start sourcing more things domestically? Maybe even find some U.S. suppliers for some of your components or products. I know it's not always easy, but if the demand is there, you never know. It could lead to some new options down the line.
Yeah, it's definitely something to keep an eye on. The bottom line is this tariff situation is a challenge, no doubt about it. But the first step is understanding what you're dealing with, and that's what we're trying to do here. Once you've got that knowledge, you can start to figure out how to adapt and how to keep your business thriving. And remember, business owners, especially in the outdoor lighting industry, you guys are resilient, you're creative, you're problem solvers, and that's what's going to get you through this.
Absolutely. And, by exploring these different options, by being proactive, you could definitely navigate these changes and come out on top.
So just to recap, this new 34% tariff on everything coming in from China, it's a big deal. It's going to affect businesses across the board and especially in the outdoor lighting industry.
And what we've tried to do here today is give you a clear picture of what's happened based on that AP report. We've also talked about some potential strategies you can use to deal with this to make sure your business keeps running smoothly.
But beyond this specific tariff situation, there's a bigger takeaway here. The world of global trade, it's always changing. There are always new challenges popping up. So the real question is, what can you do to make your business more resilient, more adaptable, no matter what comes your way? That's something to really think about as you move forward.